When you play a game, it feels like your player moves around a fixed map, but this is merely just an illusion. To see why this is the case, let's focus on 2D games. These types of video games usually have pretty big maps. If everything was shown at once, you wouldn't be able to focus on one particular part of the screen. Another reason is because of floating point errors. This is why video games tend to follow the player. Now, it may seem that the player is moving around the world, but this isn't what really happens. Instead, the game tends to fix the player's coordinates close to zero. Why? Well, there are other factors, but one is floating point errors. Floating point error is an error that can occur when calculations involving floating point numbers, also known as numbers with decimal points, are performed. These errors can lead to small inaccuracies in calculations, which can gradually cause glitches or inconsistencies in movement. The reason for this is that computers round decimal numbers to the nearest full floating point number. It is just how computers handle decimals. If the computer were to convert the number to binary, for example 0.1, it becomes an infinite repeating fraction. When you are supposed to be at 0.8 in the x-coordinate, the computer rounds it to 1. That is why it starts to be inaccurate. This slowly builds up, causing even more glitches. Another reason is that the screen is just a giant screen of pixels. If we have an image, a computer can copy all its pixels to a certain region on the screen, but we still need to know where to put it. This is where a coordination system would come into play. A popular way would be to set the top right corner as 1.0 and the middle 0 point. The reason for this is because it is the same for all devices. The player then would always be pasted into the 0 point coordinate, even though the player isn't technically at 0 point on the map. Then we could just add a chunk loading system. We divide the world into pieces and load the one the player is in, as well as the other ones close to them when they start moving. This would also help prevent the accumulation of floating point error problems, since the computer doesn't have to deal with everything at once. Talk about killing two birds with one stone.